It is said that Mother Teresa carried a single notebook wherever she went, filled with personal reflections, prayers, and thoughts. Among its pages, she wrote, "The greatest poverty is not hunger or homelessness, but the absence of love." A significant comment from a woman who spent her whole life helping the poor. But it brings up a troubling question. What happens when the person offering love and hope to millions feels abandoned by the very God they serve? Even more interesting, how does someone keep their public faith strong while fighting difficult issues inside? The answer lies in Mother Teresa's own life, a paradox of immense devotion and silent suffering. While the world saw an icon of faith, her private letters, revealed after her death, exposed nearly 50 years of spiritual desolation. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. Despite feeling God's absence, she never abandoned her mission, choosing to love even when she felt unloved by the divine. Born Agnes Gongsha Bojaksiu in 1910 in what is now North Macedonia, she grew up in a devout Catholic family. She was the third child and the youngest. Her mother, Drana, raised 3 children and always looked out for the poor. "Never eat alone if someone is hungry," Drana would say, instilling in Agnes a lifelong sense of duty to others. By 12, Agnes felt a calling to serve God, captivated by the stories of missionaries in India. At 18, she made a bold decision, leaving her home to join the Sisters of Loreto, an Irish missionary order. She trained in Dublin, learning English, before travelling to Darjeeling, India. In 1929, she took her first vows as Sister Mary Teresa, later moving to Calcutta to teach at St. Mary's High School, an elite institution for wealthy Indian girls. For nearly 2 decades, she educated students in literature, history, and faith, living a structured but deeply committed life. However, outside the school walls, poverty gripped Calcutta. Every day, she saw starving children, the sick abandoned on the streets, and families struggling for survival. The contrast between her privileged students and the suffering masses weighed on her heart. Then, in 1946, during a routine train ride, everything changed. In what she later described as a divine revelation, she felt an unmistakable call, one that would define her legacy forever. The train rattled along the tracks, carrying Sister Teresa from Calcutta to Darjeeling for her annual retreat. It was September 10th, 1946, a journey she had taken many times before. But this time, something big happened. In the stillness of the moving train, she experienced what she later described as a call within the call. A force unlike anything she had felt before gripped her soul, compelling her to step away from the comforts of the convent and live among the poorest of the poor. The message was unmistakable. She was to abandon her life as a teacher and fully immerse herself in serving the suffering. We all face moments when life calls us to something greater, yet the path ahead feels uncertain. In those moments, an understanding and straight guidance can make all the difference. This is exactly what The Secret of Jesus' Apparitions offers, a path to clarity and peace through his revelations. This ebook goes into his prophecies and offers insight into what lies ahead. It's available for free in the pinned comment. Grab it now before the edition's gone. For the next months, the intensity of this divine encounter lingered. She felt an urgency that could not be ignored. But leaving the Loreto order, where she had taken vows of obedience, was not a simple decision. She needed permission from her superiors and ultimately from the Vatican. She wrote letters detailing her experience, pleading for approval to start a new mission outside the convent walls. Weeks turned into months as she waited for an answer. In August 1947, after nearly a year of deliberation, Pope Pius XII granted her request. She was released from her vows as a Loreto nun, but remained under the authority of the Archbishop of Calcutta. With only a white sari bordered with blue, a simple garment that would become her symbol, she stepped out of the convent into the chaotic streets of Calcutta. Alone, without resources, she was now fully committed to the mission she had been called to fulfill. Her first challenge was survival. The city was reeling from the aftermath of India's partition, with refugees flooding in, many homeless and starving. She had no financial backing, no place to stay, and no plan beyond trusting that God would provide. Each morning, she walked through the slums, tending to the sick, comforting the dying, and feeding the hungry with whatever she could gather. Word spread of the new sister in white, a woman who embraced the untouchables and comforted those left to die on the streets. Soon, a few former students joined her, inspired by her unwavering devotion. With their help, she rented a small room, where she taught children using sticks to write in the dirt. She had no desks, no books, only determination. This was the seed of what would become the Missionaries of Charity, though at the time it was nothing more than a handful of women bound by faith, feeding the hungry and nursing the sick with their bare hands. The number of those seeking her help grew rapidly. People arrived in desperate need: malnourished children, lepers, the dying who had been abandoned in the streets. Mother Teresa, still without formal resources, relied on donations from local benefactors. She walked the city, knocking on doors, asking for food, medicine, and supplies. Some gave generously, others turned her away. But her persistence never wavered. In 1950, her efforts bore fruit. The Missionaries of Charity was officially recognized by the Vatican as a religious congregation, dedicated to serving the poorest of the poor. With this, more women joined her cause. They adopted the same simple sari with blue borders and took vows of chastity, poverty, obedience, and an additional vow to serve the destitute. Unlike traditional religious orders that lived in convents, the Missionaries of Charity lived among those they helped, embodying the very mission they preached. Just like moments of revelation can change everything, the right guidance can bring clarity. A free ebook is available, but only while copies last. Check the first pinned comment before they're gone. One of the first major challenges was finding a place for the dying. She had seen too many people take their last breath alone, lying in filth on the streets with no one to comfort them. In 1952, she secured an abandoned temple from the city government and transformed it into Nirmal Hriday, the home of the pure heart. The sisters carried the terminally ill from the streets, bathing them, feeding them, and giving them a dignified place to pass away. Some recovered, but for those who did not, at least they died knowing they were loved. Her work was both praised and criticized. Some questioned her approach, arguing that she focused on easing suffering rather than curing it. Others accused her of converting the dying to Christianity. But Mother Teresa refused to be drawn into debates. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love, she would say. As the Missionaries of Charity expanded, so did their reach. In the 1960s, the order opened its first home outside India, in Venezuela, followed by facilities in Rome, Tanzania, and eventually across continents. By the 1970s, her name was recognized globally. Dignitaries visited her, seeking wisdom from the woman who lived among the forgotten. In 1979, the world acknowledged her impact with its highest honor, the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet, as she stood in Oslo to receive the award, she remained the same humble servant, asking for the banquet funds to be donated to the poor instead. Recognition never changed her purpose. It only strengthened her resolve. Despite the global admiration, few knew of the silent torment Mother Teresa endured. She was always there for the poor, but she was going through an intense spiritual problem that went for decades. Letters she wrote to her confessors, later published after her death, revealed a staggering truth. For nearly 50 years, she felt an overwhelming sense of divine absence. "The silence and emptiness is so great," she wrote in one letter, "that I look and do not see, listen and do not hear." Her private writings detailed a profound inner darkness, a feeling that God had withdrawn from her. This contrast between her public image as a saintly figure and her private agony was almost unfathomable. To the world, she was a beacon of faith. Inside, she struggled with doubt. Yet, she never let this turmoil interfere with her mission. If anything, it fueled her commitment. If she could not feel God's presence, she resolved to be His presence for others. This crisis began not long after she established the Missionaries of Charity. In her younger years, she felt incredibly close to God and talked about having dreams and a strong spiritual link. But as her work intensified, that sense faded, replaced by an unshakable void. She prayed, fasted, and sought guidance from spiritual advisors, but the darkness persisted. She confided in her confessor, the Jesuit priest Celeste van Exem, admitting that she felt like a hypocrite, preaching God's love while feeling abandoned by Him. Many theologians compared her suffering to that of St. John of the Cross, who wrote about the dark night of the soul, a state where the faithful feel utterly forsaken despite their devotion. But unlike John, Mother Teresa did not retreat into solitude to find answers. Instead, she immersed herself further into her work, choosing to love even when she felt unloved by God. Some opportunities don't last forever. If you're looking for insight and direction, don't miss this free ebook. Few copies remaining. Check the first pinned comment. This hidden struggle only came to light in 2007, when her personal letters were published in Come Be My Light. Some saw them as evidence that she had lost faith. Others viewed them as the ultimate proof of her sanctity, that she continued to serve, love, and uplift the poor even in the face of divine silence. To her, faith was not about feelings. It was about action. Her body, once tireless in its mission, began to show signs of frailty. By the late 1980s, heart problems forced her to slow down, though she resisted any suggestion of rest. In 1989, she suffered a near-fatal heart attack. Doctors recommended a pacemaker, a device she reluctantly accepted, not for her own comfort, but so she could continue serving. Even as her health declined, her concern remained fixed on others. "If I ever become a burden," she told her sisters, "promise me you will let me go." Despite these struggles, she continued expanding the Missionaries of Charity. By the early 1990s, the order had over 4,000 members in more than 120 countries. She visited war zones, comforted victims of famine, and opened new homes for the dying. In 1991, against medical advice, she traveled to Baghdad during the Gulf War, bringing aid to civilians caught in the conflict. When others fled danger, she stepped into it, believing that love was needed most in places where suffering was greatest. As her health worsened, discussions arose about her successor. She initially resisted the idea of stepping down, but eventually accepted that her time as leader was nearing its end. In March 1997, After nearly 5 decades at the helm, she formally resigned as head of the Missionaries of Charity. The sisters elected Sister Nirmala Joshi as her replacement, ensuring that Mother Teresa's mission would continue beyond her lifetime. Her final months were marked by increasing weakness. She was in and out of hospitals, battling pneumonia, heart failure, and the lingering effects of previous surgeries. Despite this, she insisted on spending time with her sisters, giving them guidance, urging them to remain faithful to their vow of serving the poorest of the poor. On September 5, 1997, at the age of 87, she took her last breath in the simple room she had called home for decades. The world mourned. Streets in Calcutta overflowed with mourners, beggars, lepers, the dying she had once cradled in her arms. Her funeral, attended by world leaders and thousands of ordinary people, was a testament to the profound impact she had on humanity. Even in death, her presence was felt in every life she had touched. The grief following her passing was immediate and global. Leaders from across nations paid tribute, while thousands gathered outside the Missionaries of Charity headquarters in Calcutta, waiting for a final glimpse of the woman who had dedicated her life to serving the forgotten. Her body, dressed in the familiar white sari with blue trim, was placed in an open casket, allowing the poor she had once cradled to now bid her farewell. India declared a state funeral with full honours, a rare tribute for a nun, recognizing her as a national treasure. A single realization can transform everything. Get your free ebook now while it's still available. Check the first pinned comment before it runs out. In the years that followed, debates arose about her legacy. While many viewed her as a saint in the making, others questioned her methods. Critics pointed to the austere conditions in her homes, arguing that she focused on suffering rather than medical relief. Some accused her of using aid to spread Christianity, while others claimed her stance on issues like contraception and abortion reflected rigid conservatism. But her defenders argued that she had never sought to be a physician or a policymaker. Her only mission was to love and serve. Amid the controversies, her influence continued to grow. Pilgrims visited her grave in Calcutta, and the Missionaries of Charity expanded their work to new countries. Stories surfaced of people who claimed miraculous healings through her intercession, fueling discussions about canonization. In 2002, the Vatican recognized one such case, the recovery of an Indian woman suffering from a terminal tumor, declaring it a miracle attributed to Mother Teresa. If this message makes you think and you feel it connects with you, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Also, if you really want to support our work and help us keep creating valuable content, consider giving us a super thanks. Join this amazing community and don't miss any news. The process of her beatification moved quickly. In 2003, just 6 years after her death, Pope John Paul II declared her Blessed Teresa of Calcutta. Another approved miracle followed, and on September 4, 2016, in a ceremony attended by thousands, Pope Francis officially canonized her as Saint Teresa of Calcutta. The woman who had once described herself as a pencil in God's hand was now venerated worldwide. Today, the Missionaries of Charity continue her work in over 130 countries, caring for the sick, feeding the hungry, and offering solace to the dying. Her life remains a testament to the power of service, and her legacy endures in every act of kindness inspired by her unwavering devotion to the poorest of the poor.